Let's take a case of what it means to have a parental duty. It seems what it means to have a parental duty is to have a relationship commitment with a child, such that it has been agreed to that you would take care of and nurture and grow them in this fashion. This seems to be an explicit agreement that seems distinct from, say, running into a stranger's child and then helping them find their way home. You don't seem to have the same duty of care as well as the surrogacy. Surrogacy seems to only have the duty of care in a gestational duty sense, so it seems that we can segregate parental duties and other forms of duties from distinct relationships, some of which are explicit or implicit. This conditional state of relationship has moral weight in the sense that there's different sets of social expectations assigned to parental duties than duties of a surrogacy or duties of a stranger or duties of even a sperm donor who does not want to participate in the child's life. In most instances, the sperm donor, given the biological connection, has been suggested by courts to be of relevant legal distinction. This seems to come from an instance of, say, biological connection. Still, this duty can be passed up, relinquished, rejected, at least in the instances up to just financial contribution enforcement. Even then, it is subject to limitations. Still, this biological connection does little to explain why it would have more relevance in the sense that how connected or genetically distinct does an organism have to have this parental duty relationship? For instance, do I have a greater parental duty relationship to my 36th cousin? Do I have a greater parental relationship to someone of my genetic racial heritage for non-racial heritage? This seems wrong to say. This seems to just be a limitation of the law. It hasn't found an objective means of identity in how to hold conditions to mitigate social burdens. For instance, take an in vitro fertilization swap case. It seems that many years later we would intuit that a parent who raised the child from birth to 10 would sacrifice more than they would for the biological child if they discovered dependent conditions with limited resources. That is, whose college are you going to help fund? In Singh paper titled Fetuses, Newborns, and Parental Responsibility argues that newborns and fetuses differ in moral status because newborns are the proper objects of parental responsibility, while fetuses are not. This relational account allows one to consistently claim that abortion may be morally permissible while infanticide is not. Some may ask, why are they not proper objects of parental responsibility too that I will help steer early on? Keeping an open mind, let us state the following and allow for further analogy to motivate the distinction. Fetuses are not proper objects of parental responsibility because parental duties arise only when a relational bond of care is established, typically at birth or adoption. Before that point, duties are gestational, not parental. Biology or causal involvement alone does not create the full moral weight of parental responsibility, only the relational contract does. The relational social contract provides the moral grounding, proportional indexing, and social legitimacy for parental responsibility. It explains why duties scale with relationships, why consent matters, and why society enforces parental obligations differently from gestational or causal ones. Without this contract, duties remain minimal and situational. With it, they become enduring and sacrificial. Not only do we form a contract with the child, but this is further explained by a contract with our current and future selves. To be determined and dedicated in the same way when we create a commitment to be in the military or go to college, the contract made is also made to oneself and each social connection tied to that commitment. This can be parents, partners, and financially support groups, etc. Core thesis: relational versus intrinsic features. Traditional debates hinge on intrinsic qualities, personhood, rationality, consciousness. Singh shifts focus to relational features, specifically the parent-child relation. Newborns stand in this relation, fetuses do not. Parental responsibility as moral marker. Parenthood is entangled with moral responsibilities. Once a child is born or adopted, parents acquire obligations toward them, new minimal duties of ought actions. Killing a newborn violates these responsibilities, making infanticide morally impermissible. Fetuses, lacking this relation, are not proper objects of parental responsibility. Implications for abortion versus infanticide. Abortion. Since fetuses are not yet children in the morally relevant sense of duties of care, terminating a pregnancy does not violate parental responsibilities. Responsibilities during pregnancy, for example, avoiding negative affecting substances, are pregnancy responsibilities, not parental ones, because they concern the future child, not the fetus itself, which we have distinctive duties towards. Infanticide. Newborns are actualized children standing in a parent-child relation. Infanticide breaches parental responsibility and is therefore morally impermissible. This resolves the apparent inconsistency. One can defend abortion while rejecting infanticide. Again, what this suggests is that gestational duties allow for abortion, but parental duties do not. This is also not to say that any random individual can abort another individual given the principle of autonomy, and the distinct gestational relationship of duty given the moral stances of the two. We expect parents, whoever have assumed the parent role, whoever explicitly agreed to the parental role, to have particular minimum criteria sets. These criteria sets are not present in gestational duty relations. The challenge is indexing expectations of different duty relations. Say, for instance, a teacher has a different duty, which is still a significant duty to the children, so does a babysitter. These duty relationships differ that we assigned different moral oughts to them, along with minimum thresholds. Duties differ by relation: parent, teacher, babysitter, stranger, gestational carrier. Sacrifice scales with duty. The stronger or more explicit the duty relation, the higher the expected sacrifice. Unwanted duties reduce expectations. If someone has not consented to or does not value the duty relation, for example, unwanted pregnancy, the moral expectation of sacrifice is reduced. Examples to clarify. Teacher lunches. A teacher has a duty to educate, not to feed. Providing lunches would be above and beyond. Gestational duty wanted versus unwanted. Wanted pregnancy. Gestational duty is accepted, so expectations of sacrifice, avoiding harmful substances, carrying to term, are higher. Unwanted pregnancy. Gestational duty is not consented to, so expectations of sacrifice are reduced. Cat distribution analogy. If someone dislikes cats, assigning them cat care duties imposes a burden without consent. Their duty relation is weaker, so the expected sacrifice is lower. Implication. This framework helps explain why abortion can be morally permissible given foreseeable demands and sacrifices. Parental duties post-birth carry high sacrifice expectations because they are explicit relational commitments. Gestational duties pre-birth carry lower sacrifice expectations, especially when unwanted because the relational contract is absent. Thus, abortion is not a violation of parental duty. It is a refusal of an unwanted gestational duty, which carries reduced moral weight. Some still argue that causal obligation is present regardless of parental obligation. That is to say, if you did something that caused a being to enter a state of dependency, you must take care of that being until it is no longer dependent. The challenge, however, is that even in instances where we cause an individual to become dependent, such as in a car accident, we seem to have only a minimal obligation to that individual. This is similar to the case of a biological sperm donor. The obligation is limited to financial support, which is the greatest sacrifice expected. We are not required to donate other parts of ourselves, nor do we endure additional pain, especially physical pain, and certainly not in a way that is perpetual. Likewise, if someone punches us, we do not necessarily claim the right to punch them back, unless, of course, they continue to attack us. This is to say, if something is causing us high degrees of harm continuously, and no other mechanism of ceasing is available, we are allowed to use whatever force is needed to stop the action of harm. To be clear, we can further weaken the sense of responsibility, such as the case with a sperm donor, in the sense that they donated to a sperm bank and they explicitly asked to be anonymous. We have created several opt-out means by which mere biological relationships do little to explain duties of care. We can explain more into how culpability may increase or decrease duty degrees, such as a bank robbery, versus the guy who sold the car to the bank robbers knowing that they were going to use it to rob a bank, or unknowingly, or the grandmother who harbored the bank robbers. Duties seem to be at a crux of explaining permissible and impermissible actions that help us understand roles individuals play and what to anticipate from them. Some attempt to assign birthers a role of pregnancy machine, others have much greater regard for the totality of those who can give birth. It seems the pregnancy machine is not the role most would intuit of birthers. They don't walk around with pen in hand waiting to act out a role or pregnancy machine. Such is the reason we ought to question just how strong is the case for the claim of a pregnant person whose situation we know nothing about. Do particulars matter?